Wednesday, June 12th, we have a special informational meeting prior to the board meeting today, so I'm going to let Susan take it away.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank Lizzie and Howard. Our taxing authorities were invited to join us. Last year, the state of Michigan changed its statute as regards to TIFs like the DDA and is requiring us to be far more transparent. And unlike the Arbor DDA, many DDAs have not had robust websites, and there's a lot of details what needs to be included. And among the other efforts, they want the DDAs to provide at least 2 informational meetings a year. And this is our first. And we're very proud to have this opportunity to share information about what our activities are. And in hopes that there are ways we can make this meeting even better. Next time, if there's any feedback on this first meeting, let me know so we can change content and format. There we go. So the topics I'm going to cover in this are project areas in a number of areas. We're going to talk about capital improvements projects. We're going to talk about mobility, sustainability, housing, quality of life. And I'm going to touch on some of the efforts we have to try to do our best to support the taxing authorities who are supportive or who are part of our TIF. So the first projects I'm going to talk about are our people-friendly streets initiatives. There are 2 aspects to these projects. The first is we're taking on infrastructure repairs and investments that directly relate to city goals and to the DDA mission. And as importantly, we are, through the redesign of these streets, prioritizing with the design the human life above all other considerations, including traffic speed. And this is a big shift in how downtowns are being shaped. We share with the city goal of Vision Zero. The first project to mention is 5th and Detroit. We began the project in fall of 17, and we're going to be completing it this summer. We did this project in partnership with the city. Our portion included repairing the historic brick street on Detroit and making improvements to the farmers market. Signature elements of the project were focused on improving the crossings between the community high school campus and the farmers market side, and also enhancing the quality of place with 2 new plazas, which have already been put to great use. The next people-friendly streets project that is also underway is Huron Street. Like 5th and Detroit, this project is focused on public safety and pedestrian safety, and like it also involves capital improvements. This is a project that will involve replacement of a lot of sidewalk, but we're adding new elements such as all new street lights along the street. They'll be in compliance with city standards. There'll be conduit and pavers. Trees will be a signature element because this is the street that communicates that you're in Tree City. But as mentioned, the focus of this project, the real transformational part of the project, will be the traffic changes. We've put forward to MDOT requested changes, including new signals and no turn on red and so forth. We are still awaiting word on some of these elements, and with the city's support and involvement, I think we will be able to get from MDOT some of these changes. The one we've heard about is they are supportive of a left turn signal here at 5th. There are pedestrians getting clobbered in the crosswalk, and having a left turn signal allows car drivers to be able to gauge when to make that left turn. We're awaiting word on the other elements. William Street, another people-friendly streets project, is underway. And again, it is another partnership with the city where we are focusing on infrastructure. The city's portion of this is a water main consolidation, and with us, we are together resurfacing a lot of roadway. But what we're most excited about is William Street allows us the opportunity for the first protected bikeway in Ann Arbor. This will run from State Street into the Old West Side. It will connect with future bikeways. And what's exciting about this was the amount of planning effort that went in, because this is a shared street. So we had to figure out ways that maintenance could be done, such as solid waste pickup, or art fair takes place at the eastern end of this area. The bikeway will be going in and probably in by the end of this fall. Another people-friendly street project that is underway is planning for First and Ashley. The signature part of that project that we're very excited about will be the restoration of 2-way traffic. These streets were designed for 2-way traffic and made one-way in anticipation of a bypass that fortunately was not installed. The goal of this, as with the other projects, is to make it safer for pedestrians, and with this we'll have our second protected bikeway. Here we're talking about some of the elements and costs. The DDA is also involved in some smaller projects, smaller only by our scale. These are pretty significant, I think, by anybody else's scale. We dedicate a significant amount of money every year to sidewalk repairs, in particular focusing on the brick. We undertake these repairs in collaboration with the city, who focuses on the concrete portion of the street, although we do that as well. This year, the big project that we used this for was to regain the 4th Avenue sidewalk in front of the former Ann Arbor Inn, the Courthouse Square, otherwise known as the Courthouse Square building. That canopy just came down a couple days ago. With it, we now have been able to regain a sidewalk that's been out of public use for decades. This year, we're also working with the city to replace the litter cans on the sidewalk. We're participating with them on a solid waste study, and we're beginning planning for our next People-Friendly Streets project, which will be in the campus area. In addition to the street projects, the DDA takes responsibility for public parking. We've been managing public parking for almost 3 decades. This year, I'm going to talk about the projects, but I just want to stop for a moment to say that by just about every measure that I'm aware of, the DDA has run a really good parking system. We keep it in good condition. We manage it skillfully to meet the needs of downtown, and by the measures we're able to capture, we have really good customer service. And I'm very proud because the role we have is to run the parking system in support of larger goals, which is a vibrancy in downtown. And the parking system is working well to support that. We're making a number of significant investments this year in the parking system. You'll note the parking repairs. In fact, that'll be on your agenda a little later for repairs this summer. We continue with upgrading our parking revenue control equipment and ongoing maintenance, and we'll talk a little bit more about the EV chargers, but we're working toward creating a parking system that supports an increased amount of electric vehicle use into the future. The big project this year has been a lot of work done to expand the Ann and Ashley garage. We developed a site plan on this and working with city staff. It'll be coming to the council July 1. The purpose behind the project, I think, is worth noting. It is not because we think that there's such a terrible parking problem in downtown that we need to add parking. The reason began with the DDA's focus on the opportunities to encourage development on the western side of our downtown. There is, on the western side of downtown, a lot of surface parking lots. And in addition to First and Ashley, which is bringing water mains and more pedestrian-friendly streets, the garage is an opportunity to encourage those private property owners to shift from having public parking on their sites to having the public parking in this garage, and then higher and better uses could go onto their own properties. There is demand in this garage. I don't know that people realize this because sometimes it is seen only on the weekends, but in fact during the week it has some of the highest demand in the system. The real reason into this structure, though, is it was designed to be expanded, and there's a lot of opportunities to leave aside what little land there is downtown for higher, better uses and adding garages to a centralized place. And as mentioned, this project will go to council July 1. What we'll be asking them for is project support, support for the construction bond. And what we'll be sharing with them are the elements of the project beyond the expansion. Through the process of developing the design with staff's help, with Republic Parking's help, with city staff's help, where we've arrived is a garage that will make, I think, us more proud than we are today. We're going to be modifying pedestrian elements of the garage to make it more pedestrian friendly. We'll be adding another water main with this, again, because part of the garage's purpose is to encourage development nearby. We'll be adding a new elevator on the western side of the garage to encourage those lots when they're redeveloped. Those tenants will be using the garage from that side. But we're also focusing on, where we can, adding some sustainability elements. When it was built in the mid-'80s, these were not things that were considered. So though it seems modest as compared to what a new garage might bring, it is a significant contribution we're making to make this old garage a little better, and that includes the LED. We're adding a significant amount more electricity for more EVs, and I'm most excited that we'll be adding the rooftop elements so we can come back to you with a solar energy project where we'll have car canopies up there with solar power, solar generating canopy elements. So that then anticipates the next project after this. Cars are not our only mobility interest. As many of you know, the DDA is a co-founder of the Get Downtown program and the Go Pass. We're now in our 19th year of funding. At our recent Operations Committee meeting, we heard from the Get Downtown coordinator that recent survey work has documented that approximately 1,200 people a day are coming to work every day and not coming and parking with a single occupancy vehicle in our system. That means they're using transit, they're bicycling, they're walking, they're sharing cars, and so forth. This is to our good as far as our sustainability goals, and as importantly, it's to the good that we are maximizing the parking we have for visitors and customers. I'm very proud that the DDA continues with its commitment to bicycling in downtown. We are conservatively at about 1,000 bike parking spaces downtown, and I almost said car. 1,000. We have a whole new parking system downtown that is about bicycles. Some of them are inside, as was just installed at 4th and Washington. Some of them are on the sidewalk. Some of them are seasonal, those in-street racks. So we're going to continue to grow that biking system, which includes a lot of that infrastructure. And then, as with many things we do in partnership with ATA, the university, and the city, we're co-sharing the Arbor Bike Project to see if we can get bike share up and running and successful. In addition to our other long-term commitments, the DDA has had a very long tenure in support of affordable housing early on. And I go back to, I started here in '96. We were talking about the diversity of housing being an important element to encourage a diversity of uses downtown, because it's tied together with who we have downtown, who is using downtown. And the importance, I think, preceded any dialogue that's now taking place about gentrification. We saw early on that we needed to play a role. We're now in a place where we're well over $5 million in grants, and that includes 3 grants given this year alone, this fiscal year, a grant to Avalon Housing and the Housing Commission just last month, and a grant last July to encourage them to oversee the redevelopment of the Y lot with a significant amount of affordable housing. And then 2, this body voted to commit the amount of money that's in our housing fund at this point, which is $745,000. We've committed it, so when the city is able to secure a developer to redevelop that Y lot, we have funds in place to help to help sponsor some of the affordable housing on that site. So too, we have had a long-term commitment to sustainability initiatives. It's a signature part of our development plan. This year saw the installation of a solar electric project on 4th and Catherine. This was meant to help us understand how this could work when we get to the top of Van Ashley. We wanted to understand things like the slope and how it meets the sun, but then also how does ice and snow slide off when it gets to be hot in the spring. It's only 3 or 4 car spaces, but already generating enough solar electric that it's offsetting CO2 in a pretty significant way. The projects I mentioned earlier at 5th and Detroit involved rain gardens, and we're going to be adding more infiltration as part of Huron and other people-friendly streets. And the LED lights that we're bringing in are night sky friendly. And there is, and we met with the Planning Commission, and they reminded us that there is coming forward from the city an ordinance change recommending night sky certified poles, and we're already ahead of this with what we've been installing. Again, these are street lights selected in collaboration with the city. I touched on the electric vehicles. We have at this point 29 charging units. Staff are developing a plan to add more based on the electrical capacity in our garages, and where possible, staff are also assigning an empty parking space next to the EVs, because eventually we may reach a place where we can share an EV. A car that's there 8 hours doesn't need the EV the whole time. We've got to figure out strategies where those EVs can be shared between vehicles. We have also been working in support of quality of life downtown. In particular this year, there was a lot of focus on special events. My colleague Maura Thompson helped to spearhead a special event task force. We met with city staff for a number of months to figure out strategies to encourage events, and at the same time keep in mind the kind of security and safety issues that we need to consider. And I think we were successful in our efforts. And as always, my favorite project throughout the year is the holiday tree lighting. The twinkle lights go on, and we see them twinkling between November to March. And in the dark days of Michigan winter, it's a joyful thing to walk through downtown because of those lights. It's part of what we do to encourage people to walk around downtown. I mentioned that this is a chance to also thank our taxing authorities. This is the county, the city, AATA, the community college, and did I lose one? and the library. There's Josie right behind me. I knew you'd catch me. Sorry, Josie. We are incredibly grateful to all of them for their support for this DDA. We know our TIF is capturing funds that otherwise might be considered part of the revenue capture. Through the year, we try to remain in close contact with our taxing authorities, and in some part that's through our partnerships committee. It's also one-on-one meetings that I have with representatives of these agencies. The taxing value in downtown, the taxable value, is growing. In direct relationship, I think, to the DDA's efforts, you can look and see that the taxable value is growing. And that's important because these are tax revenues for our taxing authorities. And among the elements of this is in 2016, a TIF cap was installed on the DDA's TIF. And this year, we're seeing a delta of about $900,000 that are going to the taxing authorities and not the DDA, because the growth has been that strong beyond the cap. And that will only continue to grow. We know more projects are on the horizon. We work particularly closely with the city. I've mentioned a few other instances. The biggest piece is we are running the city's parking system. And when we took it over in '92, it was because the system had failed. It was losing money, it was completely deteriorated, and we took it on with the idea we could do our best to fix it. I'm very proud to say that we are at a place now where we're able to provide the city 20% of the gross revenues, which is over $4 million a year. And the facilities are all in excellent shape, and as I mentioned before, I think very well managed, and I think a real point of pride for us as a community. But those resources, those revenues to the city from the parking system, again, I think are really important for the services we're now asking from our city. DDA itself keeps a close eye on how we manage what we do. We are, this year in particular, working to make as seamless as possible a transition in our office in the senior position. Joe Morehouse has served us well for more than 20 years as our deputy director and accounting manager. And I'm very proud to welcome Sarah Collin as our new deputy director, and we are in that place of transition, so it will look seamless to the outside, the management of our resources. So I'm going to land here. I think this is an excellent year to point to. DDA has had enormous impact in meeting our mission and in meeting the goals of the community. We approach our work from a variety of directions, and always look forward to hearing from others if there's more that we could be doing to work to support of our community, and in particular the downtown that we all love. So thank you, and I appreciate your time in our first informational meeting. Thank you.
So this meeting is closed, and now we will begin our board meeting.
Can we invite Rishi up?
Rishi?
Look at my chair.
Just
Special
for you.
chair.
Apparently you need a wide body chair. Good.
So, welcome to the Wednesday, June 12th, 2019 Downtown Development Authority Board Meeting. Susan, would you take roll?
Yes. One moment. Okay. Roll call. Bob Gunsel.
Here.
Tyler Kinley.
Here.
Reed Clough.
Here.
Howard Lazarus.
Present.
Jessica Letow.
Yes.
Joan Lowenstein. Molly McFarland.
Here.
Darren McKinnon.
Present.
John Mowat.
Here.
Rishi Narayan.
Here.
Keith Orr.
Here.
Phil Weiss.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great, so I'd like a motion to approve the board meeting agenda.
So moved.
I have an amendment to propose. Amendment to move.
Okay.
Second.
Partnerships Committee will be bringing forward a resolution.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. All right, motion approved. So now I would like a motion to approve the amended board meeting agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Next up, we have audience participation, and I have Peter Honeyman. Seeing no Peter, are there any other? Josie.
I'd just like to take the opportunity to recognize the work of the DDA in relation to the downtown and the success of the renovations over the years to the downtown library. The DDA was very instrumental in helping us take care of our front porch issues that we had to do several years ago that allowed for ramps down on both sides, new concrete, better steps. DDA had to, all that sidewalk out front had to come up, it had to come back down, had to be put back down. It was a pretty big undertaking. In that same process, when Library Lane was developed, Library Lane allowed for an passenger side drop-off to the downtown library front at one of those ramps. Before that, the only passenger side drop-off available was on William Street. And most people would pull up in front of the library on Fifth Avenue, stop, doors would open on all sides, children included, would be coming out into traffic to come across into the public library. This went on for years. So the Library Lane provided us the space for school bus drop-off on passenger side, passenger car drop-off, that triple ATA rides for people with disabilities drop-off there. So it's allowed us to do this thing for public safety. It's also allowed us now, when the DDA comes back to the library with another huge project on William Street, which is the protected bikeway, which removes the parking on our side, the library side of William Street. So that passenger side parking drop-off goes away. Library Lane becomes incredibly important as a place where people can get out safely and come into the downtown library. And I just want to take this moment to point that out. As we look at the bigger issues in that area and how people want to change it, I think it's important for you to hear me tell you how incredibly important Library Lane is to the function and for the safety of people coming into the library. At the same time, I want to say the library has stated publicly and clearly that they're in favor of the bikeway, and the library supports that and will do that. It requires us to move our drop box up from that corner, which will no longer be a place for parking, up onto the front porch, into a wall at the porch, on the porch level. So that's going to happen as the bikeway development happens, so people will be redirected up to that location. So we're willing to make adjustments for this to happen, because adjustments have been made for us to do other things that happen. And from my point of view, frankly, that's how it ought to work. And that's how it's always worked for my almost 20 years in the library and 17 in my position. It's always been a pleasure to be able to work with the DDA to figure out how to work this out and make this better. So I just want to, you should know that from me today, and I want to thank you very much for the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. Any other audience participation? Okay, seeing none. Next up are reports from the city boards and commissions. Ray?
Good morning. At last month's meeting of the Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council, we agreed to support the approved City Council resolution directing the city staff to work with the Ann Arbor Housing Commission and Washtenaw County Office for Community and Economic Development to evaluate the feasibility of developing affordable housing on select city-owned properties. And I mentioned them last report, the Y lot, the Klein lot, 216 West William Street, 415 Washington, 404 North Ashley, 4th Avenue in Catherine, 721 North Main, 3400 block of Platte Road, and 2000 South Industrial, as well as the former firehouse at 1510 East Stadium. That's a lot of locations with possibilities. The CAC believes that this should take place as part of the broad development of the downtown and near downtown neighborhoods. At last night's Citizens Advisory Council meeting, some guests and members came prepared to advocate for tearing down the remaining old building at 415 West Washington as a positive step for eventual affordable construction on the site, perhaps included as part of a future tree line development plan, because we insist upon connectivity with regard to the nature of possibilities, so that it's not just developed specially for itself, but related to what our other plans are for the downtown. We also talked briefly about the very large development currently proposed for the South Main, Ann Arbor, Saline Road, and Scioto Church area. Here is a copy of the traffic study for that particular project. a multimodal evaluation. Two of the conclusions. The existing conditions analysis indicates that all study intersections operates acceptably. The background conditions analysis indicates all study intersections will operate in a manner similar to existing conditions. This, of course, is not downtown, but it does suggest that we should seriously question our commitment to continuing our reliance on more parking in the downtown area. Of course, believing a traffic study and then actually having it, testing it and all that sort of thing are two different things. While the consensus of those present last night at last night's CAC meeting supported the proposed 19-story high-rise on East Washington behind the Michigan Theater, the plan includes 2,002 bicycle parking spaces and 141 auto parking spaces, 127 of which would be on-site and 14 would be leased from the city. Those present agreed that our support for downtown housing units should be concerned with parking, but also more concerned with transit to and from downtown and near downtown residential neighborhoods. It doesn't matter whether it's North Main, whether it's Broadway Street, or wherever it is, that area adjacent to the downtown is very important that we think largely about the nature of transit, not adding cars to the area if we can avoid it. Last night's meeting eventually turned to discussion of the future of the library block. We all seem to agree that we should continue to be a part of the discussion of issues relating to the future of that block and the library's location on it. With that in mind, members of the Citizens Advisory Council last night urged me to provide a positive answer to a recent invitation from Ralph Wilhelm and Will Hathaway for me to join them in discussing the issues. This is serious stuff, and of course we're going to be representing the nature of our thinking with regard to that location, not necessarily the thinking that went into the last vote with regard to what happens on the library block. And I'll do that this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Next up, DDA Board Member Communications.
So as many of you know, every month I hold 2 monthly downtown halls to be able to talk with the public about the projects that we're doing, our priorities, and the things that are coming down the line. I do one walking conversation and one stationary conversation. This month, the walking conversation I had last Saturday, so I'm sorry if I didn't see you there. Today's coffee hour will be this evening at the downtown library on the 2nd floor in the cafe vending area. Bring coffee if you would like some, and we'll sit. I'll have a couple of copies of the downtown report. I never come with an agenda. I'm just there to chat and answer questions. I'd also like to share that starting this month, I am a part of the community committee for the transportation plan update, and that's going to be kind of circling in different ways throughout the community. There are 2 public meetings this week, one this evening, and they'll have a presence tomorrow at the Mayor's Green Fair. But if you're interested in keeping up with the transportation plan update, I just encourage you to kind of be aware as those announcements come out.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Any other member communications?
I just wanted to take the opportunity, since we talked about the library informationally and Josie came up, to reciprocate and to say we recognize the importance of the library to the downtown, that it is such an important destination point, and it's our pleasure to support you any way we can. And we appreciate your flexibility in return as well.
Any others? Seeing none, we'll move right along to Executive Director Communications.
Susan, I missed the informational, so why don't you just go ahead?
Let's just do it all together.
That'll be good, thanks.
Yeah.
We'll send you the PowerPoint.
Exactly. Mine is brief. We are reminding you that the board meeting is moving 1 week later, so we'll be meeting July 10th, not the 3rd, because there were too many conflicts with the 4th of July holiday. So please make a note of the 10th. And that secondly, that is the date where we will hold 2 meetings as well, only that is our annual meeting. The annual meeting is when we choose our officers and we reaffirm our committees for the year. So I'm urging everyone to join us that day so we can get that business done. Thank you.
We've already nominated Rishi to chair all committees.
All committees. Yes.
I did not hear that. I did not. Who seconded that?
Sarah, you weren't there, so.
I'm sure we missed a second in there somewhere.
Okay, next up, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes from the May meeting?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. All right, the motion passes. With horns. Next up, the Supercharge Subcommittee reports. We are going to start with the Ops Committee.
All right, that means I'm up first. Keith and I are going to tag team this. First item on our agenda, I would like to move a resolution to accept a proposal for the repair/paving of the South Ashley lot. Thank you. We received 3 bids for this repair paving of that lot. Asphalt Solutions provided the lowest bid. They are registered with the city as an approved applicator of pavement sealing, which is a requirement. And without further ado, the committee recommends the approval of this resolution. It's in your packet. The bid was $149,635. Like I said, they were the low bid among 3 paving contractors. Any discussion, comments? Derek?
Typically, we have a contingency in addition. Are we not expecting any changes? I don't see a contingency on top of that. Okay.
Any further discussion? All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The resolution passes.
Second resolution I'd like to move is a resolution to approve a contract for 2019 parking system repairs with Pullman SST Incorporated and establish a project budget. Support. Thanks, John. Resolution again is in your packet. Pullman SST came in with a bid amount of $623,885. On top of that, we have a 20% contingency. So the total project is $748,662. We are recommending the acceptance of this resolution. I do have a question. Pullman is new to us, correct? And the engineer is new but not new, correct, Jada? If you could clarify that for us.
Correct. So we have not worked with Pullman before. Our engineer has worked with Pullman and had good experience with them, and the University of Michigan has worked with them on several large projects. So.
And this is an annual
Yes.
fix-up
Yes.
that we undertake every year.
Concrete repairs, lots of concrete repairs, traffic coatings, sealants, kind of caulk, and work in the expansion joints. At 4th and Washington, doing some drain work, so it kind of varies by facility, but the bulk of it is concrete repair.
Any further discussion? All right, so let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
And I'll throw it over to Keith.
All right, we're whipping along here. The
Passes.
next resolution is on page 21, no, 22 of your packet, is that right? Yes. And I would like to move that.
Second.
So this one is the annual incentive fee for Republic Parking. Our contract with them is for a guaranteed $125,000, $50,000 is held back, so the DDA can annually assess their work. We've had a lot of discussion today about what a great job they are doing. As a result, the committee, we heard from Jada, who does the bulk of the direct contact with them, and also in your packet on 23 is a fairly detailed assessment from Jada about that. And so we are recommending the full $50,000 remaining amount of the incentive fee be approved. Discussion.
Questions, discussion? Great. All right, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Resolution passes.
Excellent.
Can I ask a question about Republic not related to the bonus?
Sure.
I'm interested on the follow-up on the office needs, if there's any discussion on that.
Was that in?
There was
There
committee
was.
discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, and we are looking at a couple of different options. Should we go into detail at this point? Can we? Sure. There's been some recent developments, literally in the last couple of days.
Hot.
So at the last operations committee meeting, we were kind of catching everybody up. The topic of the police station that's there on Maynard came up again. John Fournier was at that meeting with us, and he said that he would kind of investigate, reach out to the police department. He did that. We met with the interim police chief there and kind of walked through the spaces to give him a sense of what Republic occupies now, kind of how that impacts or plays into the space that the police use. So he and John were going to talk further, and then John and I are going to connect this week to see if we can work anything out or what options are available there.
Thank you, Jada.
Yep. So ongoing.
Sure.
And hopefully at our next meeting, which is Wednesday, June 26th, we'll have more information
Thanks,
to
Keith.
that. All right, so the final resolution from our committee at least is on page 25, and this is the proposed development at 616 East Washington, and it has to do with parking contract with them. I would like to move that.
Support.
Second.
Let's see. What else do I have to say to that? Is this the one with the amendment?
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
right.
The 15 parking spaces.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a move to amend the
Oh.
resolution. Make changes to the resolution.
I guess I'm going to need to
There.
make a motion to amend this resolution.
I think I left mine back.
I'm ready for you.
Yep.
I guess I did the same. So,
Wait, you need a second.
I need a second, please.
I second
I'm
it.
moving to amend the resolution.
Second.
Thank you. Basically, don't get nervous, guys.
It's a friendly amendment?
It's
We are
not-
just,
we voted
we're
on it.
adding some language to the resolution on the, I believe it was the city's suggestion, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong. Just to sort of explain the why of this. So I'll just read the added language to the resolution. It's going to go on the second to the last paragraph. Resolved, DDA approval is subject to the petitioner providing the following beneficial elements as part of the project, as described in their May 22, 2019 memo. 2 refuse collection areas designed to manage the solid waste for the proposed project, as well as tenants of the adjacent buildings. Inclusion of affordable housing, 19 units up to 60% and 80% of AMI, on-site car share, a single curb cut for the entire project. So that was just summarized what you guys talked about, and the city thought it was a good idea for us to put that in our resolution. So that's the amendment.
And there was one other word struck, which is in the third paragraph. The word zoning was struck just because there were several requirements from the city involved. So the last sentence just reads, so their project will meet the city's requirement for parking.
Any more discussion about the amendment? So all those in favor of the amended resolution, say aye.
I think we need to vote on
Is
the
On the
amendment.
amendment.
Oh, sorry. I am.
You
She said amended.
resolution,
Amendment
we're just
to
voting on
the
amendment.
resolution.
Sorry. So all
Assistance to the
those
regional.
in favor. All those in favor of
No, we can't
the
have friendly.
amendment to the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Right. Amendment passes.
All
So
right.
now we're back to.
Right, so the developer requested 15 parking permits, and the committee is recommending that the DDA provide 15 off-peak permits. They also recommend that the parking contract be as short as possible to them, which is 15 years with no renewals. And Amber will be available to answer any questions.
Off-peak meaning the nighttime one?
Yeah.
Yes, weekends.
Nights and weekends, okay.
Any-
We didn't even need Amber for that one.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Resolution passes.
Back to Phil.
Oh, right. We're not done.
We didn't practice this.
Summarizing some other ongoings at our last meeting. The city is requesting DDA support to allow it to install a 2-car solar carport / EV station on the Palio lot. The goal is to gather and analyze data, particularly from the batteries being used in those solar car EV stations. The carport / EV station will not be used during special events. And that's a partnership that we're having with the city. I believe this carport station will be on the southwest corner as it stands right now of the Palio lot. Southwest corner.
Up against Main.
Up against Main Street, corner of William and Main. We also, any discussion or questions about that?
I wanted to mention, so at that operations meeting, a gentleman from Main Street Ventures, which just transitioned from passing of the founder, came and he was just learning about it. He expressed some concern about the project in terms of location and how it was going to integrate with some planned renovations they had. And we always support people, if they're doing new developments, to speak to their neighbors. And it just seemed to me that maybe the city didn't take their own advice and talk to the neighbors before they planned this. And I'm strongly in support of the project, and I don't think we're approving anything today, but I just wanted to encourage the city to reach out to Main Street Ventures and talk to them as a strong downtown partner to make sure that whatever does happen is, as much as can be, work along with them to get their approval.
Yeah,
That's the wrong word, but you know what I mean.
Support.
Yeah, support.
There's questions of visibility as people come up Main Street.
Yeah, there was some concern.
But there's also that site was selected because I think it's closest to utilities.
Yeah, but I don't think he's asking for it to be moved off the property, maybe just coordinated a little bit better.
I think he's asking for it to be put back closer to the building.
Yeah, I'm just encouraging the two of them to get together and have a discussion.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yep. Southwest is like right on the corner of the streets, right?
Yeah.
That's like prime visibility, so to speak. That sticks and juts out right in the middle of everything.
Yeah, and Palio is going to do some renovations and repaint and so forth, and I think that's what his concern is the visibility. People coming north on Main Street.
Right. So like, and that's interesting because the goal is to get data on how it works from a electricity and grid standpoint versus a advertisement of Ann Arbor solar power. Like, those are two different goals. So if it's just like people are going to use it, they're going to use it, then you wouldn't put it front and center. If it's like, we want this to be the centerpiece of our solar movement, then that's a little different.
The way I understood it, it was more from a functionality standpoint because that location that they chose, like I said, is closest to the utility lines.
Just like straight up closest. But I mean, like 3 parking spots over is still pretty darn close.
That was my thought too. I think there's just an opportunity for maybe some further discussion, and my understanding is that they were basically told this is happening and deal with it, which is unfortunate.
Collaboration.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that's what happened, so I withhold any judgment. I appreciate the suggestion to make sure we're always collaborative, but I'm not willing to make the leap to the fact, to the apparently cold-hearted approach that's being alleged.
I'm just relaying what I was told.
I appreciate that.
And just to throw in my experience, we indeed had concerns when it was put, the DDAs was put in over in the Carytown lot, because I used to have a bookstore right there. and
it drove it out of business.
Well, no, that was not the cause. It seemed far more imposing than it ended up being. There's a lot of space, a lot of negative space in one of those. So I think can't hurt to talk to them, but I think it's not as imposing as people construct it.
This though, that does have a battery component to it that takes up a little more space than what was put on the Catherine Street lot. So it is an interesting and forward-looking project. So, and I'm sure there are other constraints in terms of how people get in and out of the property as well. So, but you know, we always strive to be as collaborative and build consensus as we can. But appreciate the feedback.
I'm curious, since this is our second solar carport, right? We did the first one to learn from it, and now we're doing the second one to learn from it. I'm wondering what we're doing on the second one that builds on what we learned from the first one. Is there anything?
Well, this one has a battery component, so it can be, you can use it all. You know, we store the electricity rather than supposedly feeding it back into the grid. So that if you charge your car there, it'll always be off what's generated from the solar input, not from other sources during the nighttime.
So it's a very different discovery process.
Thanks.
Sure. And Ashley expansion. The update is that this project was reviewed by the Planning Commission and will be presented to the City Council for approval on July 1st. This is the bond-only approval. So the plans and specs won't be discussed at City Council. Those have been accepted by the Planning Commission, and the City Council will vote on the bond on July 1st.
Assuming that passes, when does it start?
July 2nd, 12:01 a.m.
So I don't have a solid answer for you. We asked our engineers to speak with contractors to get a flavor for where the bidding environment is, if it makes sense to wait, if they're so busy that the bids would come in high, or would get few bids, if it made sense to bid it at a certain point. So we'll know more by the time we get to Operations Committee about that and their recommendation on when to go to bid.
Thank you.
I have a Maven update. DDA provides car share spaces so downtown employees can have a car available midday if they use transit or bicycles to commute. The committee agreed to Maven's request for 3 additional spaces in a consensus, but I don't know if we have identified those 3 spaces for sure, those locations, have we? They are
2 at Maynard and 1 at Liberty.
2 at Maynard and 1 at Liberty. So 3 additional for Maven. So, any questions or discussion around that? Okay.
All right.
Keith?
We did not get the treasure trove of information that we asked for. I take it. It's okay.
No, well, we talked about the fact that each Maven car has a unique pass, and we can go in the Republic data and figure out when those cars are coming and going.
Oh, that's cool.
Back into when they're being utilized.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I see. Look at that. It's cool.
I think we asked for a lot. We got a little bit, and we should be happy with
That
that.
was, I think that was the plan, right? We asked for the moon and we got just like a piece of cheese. I just made that up. You guys can.
It's moldy cheese.
Trademark that.
Is this a sign that the Operations Committee report's going on a little
Too long?
Let's see. We have 3 more things to cover, however. Hopefully they'll all be pretty quick announcements. One is that we have been, as I think we all know, doing suicide deterrent fencing on all of the structures. And there was some questions brought to us about fencing design specifically on the 4th and Washington, the lower levels. So provided direction, but I wasn't there for that part, so I don't recall what the direction was.
Well, we sort of made a decision on the design that we liked, which was with the horizontal cables.
Okay.
And I think where we stand right now is Jada is working with the contractor to sort of look, get a mock-up done, get some idea of how much it might cost, the process involved, so forth and so on. Right? Did I summarize that correctly? Okay.
Yeah, because there were unique design questions about that because of the fencing that's already there.
Yeah.
That it couldn't just simply be the same fencing that we've done in other places. All right, July 1st, this was referenced also in our informational meeting that one of these things we've done for sort of long-term stability is the last time we did parking rate changes, we actually did them at a smaller amount and approved them over a period of time. And the next rate change takes place on July 1st, as approved by the board in 2018. And then finally, there's a parking and transportation participation report in the packet. Do we have page numbers for that?
36.
36 through 38. Very good. So that's free to peruse them. It's always well presented, so easy to read. If there are any questions, you can throw them to, I guess, Jada would be the one. If not, our next Operations Committee meeting is June 26th at 11 a.m. Anyone, please come and join us. As you heard, there are quite a few things we'll be talking about at this one.
Okay, next up we have Finance Committee. Bob?
Thank you. I'd like to begin by moving the resolution that's on page 26. And ask for a second. Thank you. The resolution to adopt the DDA budget for fiscal year 2020. Under state law, before the DDA can adopt its final budget, it needs to be approved by the governing body of the municipality. And last month, the City Council adopted the FY20 budget, which included our budget as we had presented to the city. So the final step is now we need the DDA board to adopt that budget. And as I said, this is the same budget the board voted to put forward in March without any changes.
Any discussion, questions? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the 2020 budget, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Thank you. The committee had extensive discussion about parking system expense reporting. The staff requested direction from the committee on how best to respond to the request for additional reporting on parking system expenses. The committee discussed this question at length, including what information is being reported, how often, and in what format. The committee resolved that receiving information quarterly and annually is most useful because any more often there are huge swings and variances. It was also recommended that when possible, staff provide with the information charts and graphs. As part of the discussion, the committee members expressed their confidence in the staff's oversight of our parking operator, including oversight of system expenses. So, as I said, this was a good discussion about this issue, and if board members have further thoughts about it, let us know, or we can put it back on the agenda if you felt that you weren't there. But I think it was a good explanation of the expenses and how they're reported now. Not that we can improve, but we thought things were going pretty well in that regard.
So those will be reviewed quarterly in the Finance Committee?
Yes.
Okay, not brought here?
Right.
I think there was some discussion about, at least from me, from my perspective, I didn't know exactly what the staff was doing on an oversight basis, on a regular basis. So to me, that's where we should start, is just having staff let us know what they do to watch expenses, and if, what reports they run, and if there's any huge variances, like you said, or questions, we can ask them on a quarterly basis. So we'll start there and see what happens.
Just one small amendment, we will be bringing it to the full board, just as we bring the quarterly revenue reports. That'll now start becoming part of your quarterly reports that you'll see at the board table as well. And that gives us an opportunity, if you have any questions, anybody who's not able to make Finance Committee will have a chance to look at those reports and ask questions.
Will we see it at the next board meeting?
July will be too soon because we will have just closed our books June 30th.
Okay.
So given a little bit of time to actually collect all that data, you'll see it next time we have a board meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Is that it, Bob?
No, that's my report.
Next committee meeting?
Thursday, June 27th at 1 p.m.
Perfect. Now we move on to capital improvements. John?
Thank you. First time in quite a while, we don't actually have any resolutions, so it's going to all be just updates, keep things
and simple. First in Ashley, the design team working with Amber have put together cost estimates for the full scope of the work. Full scope of the work came in considerably over budget. So they presented us with information. Basically, the way it was presented was that there's a certain amount of base work that needs to be done to accomplish the two-way conversion and related safety measures that I think is sort of the basis of the project. And then the other elements that were identified as potential cost savings elements can really be characterized in two ways. One is what was described as infrastructure, which was mainly water main work, upsizing water mains, and the other category would be streetscape work, which would include landscaping, sidewalks, street lighting in general. Three options were presented. One was to do everything on just First Street, basically do the infrastructure and the streetscape work on First Street. The second was to do sort of a hybrid approach. And the third was to do just infrastructure, basically. So the decision, majority of committee members voiced their opinion that it should be an kind of the all-in on First Street approach, minimizing the work on Ashley. So that any work on Ashley would really be, at this point, budget-driven as they sort of refine estimates moving forward.
What was it? How much was it over?
The estimate was 11.5 million. Budget's 8.3 million.
Wasn't there a recommendation that we look at perhaps the state and North University project as being something that could be postponed and those funds be reallocated?
Yeah, I raised that question and folks did not pursue that.
Oh.
I don't know if Amber or anyone else has, I don't know if there's any new information or anything else that.
For my own, just because I think I forgot, does this include converting to two-way?
Yes, so it includes.
Yeah, the base project is two-way.
Right, that's what I thought you were saying.
Railroad and safety.
Is that part of infrastructure? Would you call it?
Well, what was being called infrastructure, I think, was mainly water main under work.
And more intense road resurfacing. So the
That comes with
option
it.
that we were asked to pursue was all in on First Street, which includes all of the infrastructure needs, the water main needs on First Street, a raised bikeway, so doing a more signature bikeway on First Street, and streetscape improvements on First Street. But the safety improvements and the two-way restoration and even the street resurfacing would still happen on Ashley.
Okay, so the two-way is happening on both streets.
Yes.
This is all the amenities, so to speak. Okay.
And then the committee asked staff to see if there were additional dollars available elsewhere in the budget or within the First and Ashley budget to make streetscape improvements on Ashley. So what we did, and we'll talk about this more at committee, is we went back and we looked at the budget to see what was available in the same fiscal years that we'll be building this project. And actually, we saved quite a bit on our bond costs, so we'll be bringing back a recommendation that we do move forward with streetscape on Ashley using those dollars.
Great.
You want to talk about the vaults on Ashley? That's the limiting factor.
Yeah, well, yeah. Why we like First Street over Ashley?
Well, there was a strong desire to install a signature bikeway, and I think also the idea that if we're going to be really disruptive, let's make sure we do everything and we don't have to come back to First Street. So that was the idea, to get everything accomplished. And then in the areas on Ashley where we would like to do some streetscape improvements, which is between Huron and William, there are a significant number of vaults, which could, if they're not filled, we aren't able to do streetscape improvements. So I think that factored in as well. We have been meeting with property owners, and we've met with almost all of the vault owners, and so far everyone has said that they would like to fill their vault and see the improvements happen. So we've made some good progress, and we'll be bringing those updates back.
That would still be the property owner's responsibility to fill the vault
The
first.
property owner has to make the repairs to their building foundation to separate their building from the vault that's under the sidewalk. And then if they can do that before our project, we will come in and we will fill it and we'll do the surface repair.
Oh, wow.
So it's the least expensive option for
Yeah.
them if they want to do this, is to do that now.
Yeah, that's cool.
Unfortunately, it's a substantial hurdle.
And
Yeah,
it is. It's a lot of money.
I'd be surprised, quite honestly, if people.
The other issues about First Street, what went that way, I think were, that several of us mentioned. One was it would be more transformative. First Street had a lot more need for transformation.
Because Ashley already has so many like shops and it's got a character to it.
Exactly, and
No
also
lights.
the fact that it was a little further out means that it might help encourage development that direction, and it might make it all the more possible for us later to go back and do Ashley once people see what the transformative project does.
Cool, thanks for.
Will there be lights added on Ashley either way?
Just stay up here.
We will have to look into this more. If many of the vaults remain and most of them extend to the curb, that will be very limiting. We probably will not be able to install lighting because we need to be able to run electrical lines, and we can't run that through somebody's vault. And then we need to put in foundations for streetlights, which are several feet underground, and we can't put that into a vault. So if those aren't filled, we will be really limited in what we can do.
I was just going to say the other transformative aspect of that is that it's also our interface with the tree line. So we mentioned the raised bikeway, that would be part of, in fact, it would really be,
Helping to implement.
one of the early stages of being able to do that interface between tree line and the downtown there. And there's also an interface right down at the intersection of First and Kingsley, right? Yes.
All right. There are no other questions about First and Ashley. Updates on the other projects. Fifth and Detroit, getting close to being done. The remaining brickwork is to be done in July. And with that, we should be done. Huron Street, I'm sure people have seen there's a lot of destruction. Majority of the work's being done between 1st and 4th Avenue, but obviously things are closed off along the way quite a bit. Light pole foundations have been going in, concrete's been going back in on the west end, and you can kind of start seeing a direction of the finished product. William Street curb work being done between Maynard and Thompson, Bikeway. One important thing is the resurfacing work is scheduled to be done before Art Fair. So there's obviously good coordination between the team and make sure Art Fair is up and running. And the last thing is the 4th Avenue canopy that Susan mentioned earlier. It's been interesting to watch. It's right from my office. And they brought it down. It was quite an amazing thing, actually, the day they used the cranes to bring the main structure in one chunk down. And everyone in my office was waiting to kind of hear and feel that thud when that thing landed. Didn't feel a thing. It was just amazing how good these folks are, crane operators. But to my knowledge, I think it's moved along pretty smoothly. It's been noisy and disruptive out there, but things are happening. The next piece of that will be to remove the large foundations that were there supporting it, which is significant because
you hear that.
One of the issues related to that is we'll be running the new gas lines through there on that side of the street, which is one of the partners in all this, so that the gas lines have a place to be run. So it's sort of part of the notion of then regaining the right-of-way back again. And then the third component associated with all that is the work being done as part of our Huron Street project at that intersection. So those are sort of the elements of that piece of work happening.
I had a quick, I was just curious, did we just get unlucky that Huron Street timing timed with Depot Street construction for like getting out onto Main Street /23, because they're both happening at the same time and it is a cluster?
I think we are fortunate to be able to tend to the infrastructure needs of the city.
Got it. Understood. That's exactly what I meant. Did I say unlucky? I meant fortunate enough.
I'm sure your wastewater infrastructure is vitally important.
Yes, okay, agreed. Have my comments stricken from the record.
So for all those in support of having Rishi stop talking, the next meeting will be Wednesday, June 19th at 11 a.m.
Thank you, John. Next up is the Partnerships Economic Development Committee. And Joan's not here, so you're up, Jessica?
Yes, and also because Partnerships falls on the second Wednesday of every month, I have 2 meetings to recap for today. Our May meeting with our taxing authority partners and our June meeting, which happened this morning. So last month, the May 8th meeting from Washtenaw Community College, Brendan Prevost, who's the Assistant VP of Marketing and Communications, joined us. He shared information on the growing list of union training events at WCC this summer, as well as the list of upcoming economic club speakers. He noted that the college has seen a 16% increase in certificates and degrees to be awarded, and that WCC was awarded a grant in support of an advanced transportation building. AAATA, and I see that both Chris and Matt had to step out, but Matt Carpenter joined us. He said that this year the AATA is celebrating its 50th anniversary, and as part of that celebration, representatives from the board actually rode buses to meet patrons and hand out tokens. He also gave an update about the Regional Transit Authority, saying there may be another try for regional transit in Southeast Michigan with a potential millage vote in fall of 2020. From the Planning Commission, Shannon Gibb-Randall joined us, and she reported that the revised sign ordinance will be considered by City Council next month, and then a night sky lighting ordinance is in the works. And finally, from the City Council members and DDA liaisons, Lum and Rumlawi attended, and their primary focus of that meeting was the 415 West Washington building. Councilmember Rumlawi restated his interest at having the DDA demolish the building as quickly as possible, and was pushing for an urban farm. It was noted that there are probable contaminants on the site, so that an urban farm is likely not a safe option. In addition to the tree line, 415 West Washington is a possible location for affordable housing, and this will be part of Jennifer Hall and the Ann Arbor Housing Commission's report on city-owned public properties that will be coming later this year. An idea floated at that meeting by Susan was that the DDA grant funds to the city so that it could hire a consultant to guide a public input process to determine whether there's community agreement on the future uses of the site, similar to what we're doing right now, of what's been going on with the YLAT and what will be coming soon. Councilmember Lum cautioned about the potential pushback if the DDA were to be the lead in that initiative, and committee members agreed that this should be a city planning project. This site falls in Councilmember Rumlawi's ward. That he lives close by, he passes by it to go to his work. He hears a lot about it from his constituents, and so he feels a strong sense of urgency about removing the blight. So the conversation, it focused on a lot of things, but it was also a technical conversation of what exists, what the process is, what the challenges and constraints are, and what some of the opportunities are. I think Councilmember Rumlawi had the opportunity to learn a lot, and in the end, it felt like we ended in a pretty collaborative and positive place. But apparently his feeling of urgency has continued. So this comes to the resolution that I believe that all of you have in front of you. So Councilmember Rumlawi, along with City Administrator Howard Lazarus and Planning Manager Derek Delacourt.
Community Services
Administrator, thank you, Derek Delacourt, together met with Councilmember Rumlawi and Susan yesterday to talk about potential forward options for 415 West Washington. Councilmember Romalawi continues to feel a strong sense of urgency around demolition. And so again, the option was floated of what if instead of moving directly to action, because we really don't know where this site is going to go, what if we go through a community engagement process similar to what we're doing with the Y lot? So this resolution speaks to that action. I'll summarize what's here. Essentially that we do not have an agreed upon way to move forward, and perhaps letting developers set the strategy and the schedule. Yes?
You should move the resolution.
I should move the resolution. I would like to move the resolution to provide a grant. Okay, thank you. So to explain, thank you, Maria. So to explain the resolution, this is acknowledging that this site has not really had consensus on what should be done with it. That perhaps having developers come forward and say, here's what we want to do with the site is not necessarily a successful strategy for a city-owned lot, and so starting with community engagement, determining values and a path forward might be a way to start, and so mimicking the process that we're doing on the Y lot to do something similar, and with the same team, actually the Smith Group team, for 415 West Washington. So this resolution was brought to Partnerships Committee. We had a lively discussion, and I'm going to turn it over to Tyler and Bob in a moment to kind of flesh that out a little bit. We ended up bringing it to Executive Committee for more lively discussion, and thank you again, Howard, for joining us and continuing to provide some context. And at this point, we're bringing it to you all to talk more about what our best appropriate forward action is on 415 West Washington.
Jessica, just one thing to clarify for folks, there was a Partnerships Committee meeting this morning.
I'm sorry, yes, I flowed right into that, forgot to clarify. Yes.
That's why this is all happening.
Thank you, yes. So the resolution was brought to the meeting this morning and was the bulk of our conversation. We did also talk a little bit about the affordable housing series that we have been considering putting on with Washtenaw County, with the city, and with other partners. It is likely that we will pivot from having that be an event series to having that being a series of materials made available to the community. We also were visited by Peter Allen and one of his students, and we're talking about some prospective developments of interest to Peter Allen's classes. And I think that was everything that we talked about. Thank you, John.
So
when I don't have notes, I have no idea what I'm supposed to say.
Okay, so let's go back to the resolution.
Yes.
To provide the funding. So move that.
Yes. I'd like to move the resolution to provide a grant to fund the creation of a reuse strategy for 415 West Washington.
And we need a second.
I had seconded, but I have a question based on what Jessica said, but I don't see that in the document. You mentioned that Smith Group was going to be the consultant. Is that? So
to clarify, the resolved is that the DDA approves a not to exceed $75,000 grant to the city in support of the goal to create a successful process. How this is anticipated that it will play out is that the Y lot has been going the last several months through the process of creating a vision for the site, going out for proposals. They got 4 strong considerations back. There was an evaluation of those 4 teams. The Smith Group team was selected, and that is, I believe, anticipated to go, that contract is to go to City Council on July 1st.
That's for the Y lot.
That's for the Y lot.
So this could be anybody.
This could be anybody.
I have a conflict with Smith Group. This is not definitely Smith Group, so I'm okay.
That's correct.
The contract is a city contract, it's not a DDA contract.
But yeah, there's no guarantee that this will go to them. If so, I'll just abstain.
I think you might be safer to abstain.
We'll abstain. So I withdraw my second.
I'll second.
I'll second.
This is good Robert's Rules, actually.
Okay, so any further discussion?
I have a quick question. So this resolution came in this morning, hot off the press.
Right.
Is there a reason that it needs to be voted on? I mean, sorry if I'm...
No. This was the bulk of the conversation.
Is there a reason it has to be voted on today for those of us that I didn't even get one because I came late, so I'm peering over John, so he loves it.
And we don't like it that much, so that's
so is there a reason why it has to be voted on
I'd like
today?
to turn it over to Tyler and Bob, actually.
Oh.
I think the argument, or the idea, and Howard should correct me if I'm wrong, is this matter is coming before City Council on July 1st. And if we acted today, then they could go ahead and add the potential $75,000 contract. But Howard, is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
And some of the conversation was, should this go out to a larger process, or we provide this money immediately to tie it in? And one of the things we felt comfortable with, I felt comfortable with going forward, was that this money is going towards funding a public process. So this is saying, hey, let's engage a consultant to ask the community how we want to move forward, rather than moving forward in some certain direction. So therefore, that it felt more comfortable saying, okay, let's just tie this in and expand what's already happening on a quicker basis, to sort of demonstrate our commitment towards opening the floor of discussion, as Ramlawi would like to do, for this property.
Okay. We had a discussion not too long ago about community engagement a couple minutes ago, and on a larger sense, we have run into challenges when we've tried to market a property, get a developer in, and then we go through the engagement process as part of zoning. And with the Y lot, to avoid that kind of problem, we've gone through and are doing the community engagement up front to find out what's acceptable to the community from a consensus basis, and then as well as do put a preliminary pro forma together and sort of a massing type approach to know both what best fits on the site and what's the best fit for the site. So the same process would be valuable on 415 West Washington, which historically has had a number of false starts. So in this case, not really knowing what's acceptable to the neighbors of the site, we thought it'd be beneficial to use the same process, do that work up front, and then do the zoning work up front, so that one, the uncertainty that a developer would face in terms of whether they'll actually get through the zoning process is removed. It makes the project easier to go forward, and when you do the zoning up front, the city gets the benefit of the increase in property value as opposed to the developer getting the benefit of the increase in property value. So that was the rationale for doing it. There was a discussion, Susan and I discussed for a while, DDA, since you're already a partner on this strategy for the Y lot, along with AAATA, it would be helpful to the city to get some financial support to move this forward. I think it was always our intent to do them pretty quickly. Originally, we wanted to do both the Y lot and 415 at the same time. We separated those because we weren't sure of this funding source. But if the funding is there now, it makes sense to do them at the same time.
John.
As many of you know, I've got a long history with this property. I've walked by it many thousands of times. I live very close to it. And I was involved in the look at it maybe 15 years ago with what to do, repurposing it. It's a very complicated site. You know, there's, aside from the obvious things that I think people have talked about, which included the historical nature of it, which has now been dealt with, the stormwater issues that happen in that area, the railroad, all the rest of it. There's also underground utilities issues that I think are going to crop up that are hugely important, that are challenges both for sanitary and storm lines in that area. The other thing that I would appreciate be added to the scope of work of looking at this is the safety issue in that area. I think that I've worked for years trying to convince the Y and folks in the city to take a good look at the problems there with traffic and children being let off at peak times. Those of you who go down there, that there are times they have a child care program, and there are times when there are kids running across the street, rush hour traffic. It's a very, very dangerous situation that, despite my efforts over many years, have fallen on deaf ears. And I would strongly encourage that if anything were to be done with 415 West Washington, that it be looked closely at this issue of the safety of that area, and drop-offs and parking issues and so forth be integrated into any work done in analyzing that site, and the underground utilities challenges that scope without getting into detail, there's some important issues that maybe go beyond the obvious.
And it might be helpful if you continue to have that conversation with Councilmember Rumlawi. He walked away from our conversation, you know, and we had a good one, right? Like we all learned, I think, except for maybe you, because you've gone by 20,000 times, so you know. But Councilmember Rumlawi felt like, in retrospect, like being educated was actually people standing in the way of doing anything. And so he feels, like I said, a sense of urgency around demolishing as quickly as possible. So this is, in a way, kind of a compromise on, well, what if we take action, even if that action is not demolition? So all I'm saying is I encourage you to continue to talk with him about it, because I think that he, I think, has room to grow in terms of his understanding of the complexity of the issues on the site.
I appreciate that.
I would add that I think it's a really good process that was developed for the Y Lot, a really positive for this community and for the city, and so I'm excited to kind of jump on it and get a synergy, or to get, you know, gain some efficiencies by doing both at the same time. So I'm in favor of moving forward.
And I'll be supporting it for all the reasons he said.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, so all those in favor of the $75,000 grant, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
I'm recusing myself from this vote.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
You're fine, we needed 7.
All right, resolution passes. Are you, is that?
I think that's everything that we had in terms of updates. Our next meeting, since we're moving the board meeting back again 1 week next month, our partnerships committee falls again on the same day as the board meeting, which is July 10th at 9 a.m. And that's the meeting with our partners from the various authorities.
Okay, great. Next up is the executive committee, which is me, and I'm actually also going to bring a resolution forward authorizing the new Joe replacement, Sarah. Eventually,
The new
Sarah,
Joe.
The new Joe.
Is that what you would call her?
Yeah. Sarah
I hope not.
Well, we call her Sarah.
to be able to authorize bank transfers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Joe's leaving, and she's going to need those authorities, so we have to formally give her that. So that's what this is about. So all those in favor of doing that, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Sarah, you're in.
Sarah, you better make sure you do the signature cards that don't say Joe.
So the executive committee met earlier today. We have reviewed the agenda, talked about this resolution, and also the DDA has received a letter of engagement with Yo and Yo for the fiscal year 19 audit.
On pages 28 through
It's just
35.
on pages 28 through, I'm sure they all know that.
He's chair and waiting.
I see that, I see that. So that's it. The next executive committee meeting is Wednesday, July 10th at 11 a.m. Where are we at? Any new business? Reminder that the July DDA meeting and the annual meeting have moved to July 10th. Any other new business? Nope. Any additional audience participation?
Yes, my name is David Deepice. I want to speak to this resolution from the Partnerships Committee. I'm very disappointed that this resolution was not published ahead of time. The community has no opportunity to review any material from the committee about it, to make a comment about it. Early in this meeting, you were talking about how letting neighbors know about when you're undertaking work or projects, and here you are making expenditure money without letting people know, at least in the agenda, you're about to do it, so they can come and comment about it ahead of time if they want to. So in the future, you will not entertain resolutions if they're not published, unless there's some exigent circumstances that require emergency applications. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Any other audience participation? Seeing none, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion adjourned.